Is God a trigger for lesbian and queer women? A recently held That's So Not Gay Women's History Month Town Hall saw women of the LGBTQ+ community talking about their opinions, perspectives, the issues they face as women and queer, and their expectations from society and the authorities. During the conversation, the Reverend Dr. Atwell, a pastor of Sunshine Cathedral and a leader in the faith-based LGBTQ+ community, shared why she does not use the word God. She said that for many women, the word God is a trigger. So she now rarely uses this word and instead chose words like sacred or divine to communicate her message. Anne stated that during her doctoral dissertation, she explored lesbian theology. She expressed that lesbians in particular tend not to use God because it is a trigger word. It is a word that was used to control and to do what God says. Anne said, religion has hurt so many people, particularly lesbians, as we do not fit the norm. All I can say to that is amen. I cannot imagine adding much more to that our lesbian sisters still to this day feel unwanted in so many religious communities, in so many communities in general, but especially in the church. I grew up, this is not a lesbian story, but it is a story about women. I grew up in a church where women were not allowed near a pulpit. I found out that the church that I grew up in only allowed a woman in the pulpit in 2007. I think that if Anne went to that particular church, she ain't getting anywhere near the pulpit. Yeah. And that's the problem I think that we have to speak to, and that is that there is still massive discrimination in our world and in our community.
And do you think that part of it is that despite our trying to resist this, but that in women's minds or lesbians' minds or a lot of people's minds, God is a boy's name?
Yes. I think that's actually a significant part of it. I think that women are really triggered by the word God, not so much the concept. If you frame it in a different way, higher power, divine, sacred, holy one, that works. But the word God, if you've been told as a young woman, particularly if you're a lesbian, and if you knew you were queer or lesbian. I mean, I remember 8 years old, having a crush on another girl. And if you were told that God did not love you because you're a woman, and then you hear all of these things about gay people or queer people, you know, there's layers and layers and layers. And if you're told that God doesn't love you, could never find you worthy because of these layers, that word is a trigger. It's frightening. It's scary. Women's roles in church have often been diminished. They are the hospitality people or they are the Sunday school teacher. Not to diminish that. Not to diminish that. Those are very, very important roles. But if that's all you get to do because you are a woman, a lot of women, and particularly lesbians, they don't want to go to church. And they don't want to hear about God. And they don't want to hear the word God because it's just upsetting. But you know what? I think that's the beauty of Sunshine Cathedral and other progressive queer churches. I don't know how many of them there are, but I'm sure there's others. But it's here that women really can preach, fulfill leadership roles, just do a lot of things. Do what they're called to do. I mean, I felt a call to ministry when I was a teenager, but I ignored it. I totally set it aside because I truly didn't think that it was for me. I never thought it was for me. I never thought it was something that I could do. And here I am, as part of the leadership team at Sunshine Cathedral. I have a doctorate in ministry from Boston University. I'm actually lecturing there at Boston University later on this summer on women and church leadership. So it has changed. And I think churches like Sunshine Cathedral allow that change and encourage that change.
I think one of the things that makes that possible, and really part of our ID, part of our DNA, is queer theology.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of churches are influenced by feminist theology, and thank God. And a lot of churches are influenced by black theology and womanist theology and liberation theology. But all of those come together in queer theology,
Yes.
and then embraces what a lot of these don't, which is the queer perspective, the queer experience. And so it is feminism and womanism influencing queer theology that then influences what we offer. And so here, when something problematic is, we address it. Instead of defending it or ignoring it, we address it. There are several texts that talk about circumcision. I never heard anything about circumcision in church my whole life. When those texts come up, I relish it. I'm like, oh, I get to talk about foreskins in the pulpit and have a great time. When people who say Jesus is uniquely divine, Jesus is the Son of God, Jesus is God in the flesh, well, then God has a penis. What woman can be bothered?
Yeah.
And that is a thing. Now, if Jesus is the human face of love, of divine love, and if Jesus is a way shower showing us that we are all children of God, that we are all, as says in Genesis, made in the divine image, okay, now Jesus becomes my friend, my brother, my way shower, my teacher. But if Jesus is God, God's got a Y chromosome, and those who don't are hosed.
Yeah.
That's problematic. It's one of the reasons that we stay away from that sort of theology. And if Jesus is a sacrifice, then God, for demanding or allowing or whatever, is a monster. Like, you have to have a human sacrifice for us to be okay. Now, that doesn't make God look good. But before we see Jesus shedding his blood so that you can be saved, and you can be saved too, but you can't preach, or baptize anybody or any of that.
Nothing.
But then we see a woman with an issue of blood coming to him for healing. She has to steal the healing. She just assumes he wouldn't have any time for her. Because if you're having menstruation problems or gynecological problems, you are considered unclean by Levitical law. She's not supposed to be touching people. So instead of going, I think he would have touched her anyway, but she goes up to him and sneaks a touch, just tugs at his robe, hoping that maybe she'd get the magic. He feels it, what's happening, who did that, blah, 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 and then she's healed. But how problematic is that a man's blood is salvific and a woman's blood is contaminating?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we talk about those things. We may not come up with an answer, but we name what we see. And I think that makes it a safer place for, unless your dogma and doctrine are sacred cows, then you won't like this place.
Right.
But if you've been hurt by those things and want to be healed from this, I think that makes this a safe place. And it's a place where, because those are feminist ideals and womanist ideals that have now infused queer theology, I think that hopefully makes it a safer place for lesbians. But whether you're trans or lesbians or gay or whatever your story is, we cannot underestimate the damage done to anybody.
That's right.
By toxic, weaponized religion. I sometimes deal with people that I don't even have the skills to deal with. They are so damaged.
Yeah.
They can't hear. We're the bad guys. They don't know anything about us, but they've come across us, and we're the bad guys because we have not completely disowned or disavowed the thing that hurt them so badly, casting out demons or sexual abuse or telling them they couldn't preach when that's all they want to do in the world or whatever. And they're so damaged that they can't even imagine there's such a thing as healthy religion.
That's right.
And we've got to find a way to bless them also without insisting they ever set foot in the door.
Right.
Because we want to affirm their experience, like we believe you when you say that.
Right.
And we're sorry for that. And if there's some way we can help you, we want to. But we don't want to insist you do it our way because our way looks too much like the way that hurt you.
Right. I was reading something recently. I was doing some research on my own, just because I wanted something. I wanted a list of all of the examples in the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, Hebrew Scriptures, Christian Testament, where God is presented as female, as woman, and different examples of God. And I went online just thinking I would find a quick list. And there was something that said, and it wasn't the only one, how to refer to God as woman or female is unbiblical. Now, I have seminary education. I work in church leadership. I can set aside that foolishness.
Right.
I can look at that and say, yeah, no, you need to revisit that. I can set aside that foolishness. Not everybody can.
Right.
Yeah.
Not everybody can. Women reading that, young women reading that, maybe feel a call to ministry or want to do the work of the church. If you read something like that, maybe they don't set it aside.
And I think one of the things I like about, many things I like about the Sunshine Cathedral, but we create that space, or we hold that space for people to then ask, why am I triggered by this?
Yeah.
And they can find this as a safe place to come and explore that without it being reinforced in a negative way about, you're right the way you believe that. But no, why am I triggered by this? Or why am I triggered by that? And do it without any shame or blame.
Right.
And they're on a journey to explore that. So that's what I like about one of the many experiences here.
It gives you the opportunity to unpack it.
Yeah.
It really does. Where did this come from, and why am I still holding on to this? Sunshine Cathedral, I think, for me, my experience has been a very safe place to explore that and unpack it.
And you go to a drag show once when you're 3 years old, or once when you're 5 years old, or once when you're 10 years old, or maybe like most of us, not till you're 18, 20, 30 years old or whatever. And that's an experience. It's whatever. It's a memory. But what you're taught from birth on, what you hear every single day, that is programming.
Yes, it is.
That is grooming. That is indoctrinating. And so, so when you're telling people from birth to 7, in fact, I think it's the Jesuits that used to say, give us your kids till they're 7, we'll have them for life.
Right.
And so in formative years, when they're feeding that stuff, they don't have critical thinking skills. They don't have vocabulary to refute any of it. And that's when you're pouring that into kids' heads. And now they're letting people tell them things, well, because they're saying God said, and I've been told all my life, do what God says, blah, blah, blah. Like you get them in and that they're defenseless in lots of ways. And then by the time they do get out, they're so hurt or they're so angry. And it's news to them to know, oh, you don't have to get out, you can do it another way. Right. But we never want to suggest that you've got to be part of us in any way to be okay. We're doing what we do because we love doing it, and we love community, and we love one another. We're having a great time, and working together, we're trying to make the world a better place. If you can find ways in communities to do that, we can only encourage that. But that's what we've got going on. Before we move on to the next thing, because you're the only one who can speak to it from experience. You were a board member, you were a deacon, you were a seminarian, you're part-time staff, you were full-time staff, you're on the executive leadership team. You once did a sort of a drive to get women involved in reading and stuff in service way back when. You have women leaders helping you run the food sharing program we have to combat food insecurity. So tell women identified people how they get to be you. Hopefully an easier path than you, because you were already ensconced when I got here, and we had to work on some stuff. This is an enlightened table. This was not everybody back in the day. And so how do women get involved and follow your path?
Honestly, dip your toe in. Dip your toe in. It takes courage to come if you've been hurt, or even if you haven't been hurt. And if you want to explore the church, come and see it. And if you hear something you like, yay. And if you hear something you're not wild about, try it again. Try it again. And try it again. Honestly, the first time I came to Sunshine Cathedral, I wasn't sure I was ever going to come back because I was truly the only woman in the room that day.
Wow.
And
listen, I'm here almost 17 years. That must have been 19, 20?
Oh my gosh, it was, 1997. Okay. So that's been a year or two ago. A year or two, or 26, I guess, ago.
But because you stayed, you were part of turning that around.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. That's exactly it. And that's something that I relish and I enjoy. I love greeting the women in the church and hearing their story. And I encourage them, really, find something you like, try it. If you find you don't like it, that's okay, and try something else. But keep coming back. That is most important. It's a process, and it's a journey, and you have to work through this stuff. We all carry this stuff. Women carry their stuff. Carry the stuff, but give yourself the opportunity to work through it too. And I think that Sunshine Cathedral is really a safe place to do that.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ plus community.